Get lost. When these sharp words flew out of Mu Chen's mouth, the He Yao's face immediately twisted, almost as if he wanted to tear Mu Chen apart. He couldn't understand where Mu Chen got the courage to act so arrogantly. Did he think that because he had killed a spirit king by picking up a bargain, he was now qualified to act like he could stand on top of He Yao? Unappreciative fool. A cold, murderous light flickered in He Yao's eyes, and he could no longer hold back. With a punch, his overwhelming spiritual energy surged like a raging wave, sweeping toward Mu Chen. Boom! At that moment, black flames burned within Mu Chen's spiritual energy, exploding violently from within his body. He didn't retreat in the face of He Yao's attack. Instead, he also threw out a punch. The two waves of terrifying spiritual energy clashed fiercely in the sky. The enormous sound echoed, and the shockwave from the collision spread out, filling the air with the deafening noise of sonic booms. The spiritual energy storm ravaged the air, pushing it aside and making the space feel empty. This area was filled with excited gazes from countless students. At last, these two had started to fight. The shockwave passed through Mu Chen's body, pushing him back several steps, while He Yao only staggered back half a step. In terms of spiritual energy, He Yao had already 1 foot in the heaven-reaching stage. Even though Mu Chen's spiritual energy was infused with 9 nether flames and was of higher quality, he clearly couldn't gain the upper hand in a direct confrontation. However, Mu Chen had obviously expected this. His face was calm and collected, his black eyes gleaming with sharpness. He locked his gaze on He Yao. "It seems your strength isn't as strong as your mouth," Mu Chen said coolly. He Yao, having the upper hand, couldn't help but sneer. Although Mu Chen's spiritual energy, burning with black flames, was somewhat peculiar, he was still at the early stage of the heaven transformation stage. "You're getting a little too happy for nothing," Mu Chen said, his eyes lifting slightly. Then, his skin began to glow with a faint silver radiance, and beneath the surface, it seemed as if lightning was stirring. A deep, thunderous rumble reverberated from within him. "What is this?" Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong, witnessing this scene, exchanged a glance, their eyes widening with surprise. In unison, they whispered, "Thunder God Body? This is interesting. It looks like Mu Chen has encountered that senior in the Thunder domain. I wonder how far he's cultivated this Thunder God Body," Shen Songxing said with great interest. He was no stranger to the Thunder God Body, having trained in it himself. Seeing this change in Mu Chen, He Yao's eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, Mu Chen appeared even more dangerous than before. Boom! Mu Chen, his entire body glowing with lightning, took a step forward. His figure shot out like a silver flash, appearing in front of He Yao in an instant. His silver fist, carrying an overwhelming force of spiritual energy, ruthlessly smashed into He Yao's chest. "Still daring to clash with me?" He Yao's face darkened, and he slapped out with his palm. His spiritual energy was pushed to its limit, and every movement of his seemed to carry the power to split mountains. Clang! The fist and palm collided with a resounding metallic sound, and the violent spiritual energy spread like a hurricane. Both figures were jolted back, flying over 100 meters. The crowd below erupted into whispers. This time, Mu Chen was no longer at a disadvantage. He was truly evenly matched with He Yao. Mu Chen stabilized his footing, rubbing his fist. After activating the Thunder God Body, his strength had become formidable, like forged metal. Though He Yao's spiritual energy was powerful, this kind of direct clash clearly favored Mu Chen. But this guy, he was still tough to deal with. "It seems you're not as strong as I thought," Mu Chen said with a smile, looking at the grim-faced He Yao. "Now is the time to hit him where it hurt." "Is that so?" He Yao's eyes darkened. His figure suddenly shot backward, then suspended in the air. A vast wave of cyan-green spiritual energy surged behind him like a tide, bringing with it an incredible pressure. He let out a sharp cry. As He Yao's eyes slowly closed, the immense spiritual energy behind him erupted, surging wildly. It seemed as if a sharp crane's cry pierced the heavens and earth, reverberating through the entire space. Mu Chen's expression grew increasingly solemn. Clearly, He Yao was ready to go all out. So soon to use the crane god art? Shin Songxing and Li Xiantong narrowed their eyes slightly as they gazed at the overwhelming spiritual energy surging behind He Yao. It seemed he had sensed the difficulty of dealing with Mu Chun and wanted to end the battle swiftly rather than risk complications. Below, Luo Li, Su Xian, and the others also showed signs of concern. Mu Chen's opponent this time was no ordinary foe. He Yao's current strength surpassed by Xian's from before. Defeating him would be no easy feat. This battle would be anything but easy. Boom. Vast spiritual energy howled through the sky like a raging storm. He Yao suddenly let out a piercing cry, his voice echoing across the heavens. At the same time, a brilliant light erupted from within him. The radiance spread, forming a massive crane-like figure behind him, spanning nearly 1,000 feet. It loomed over the battlefield, blotting out the sun with an awe-inspiring presence. He Yao's eyes snapped open, sharp as blades. His hands wove intricate seals, their movements resembling a soaring crane, leaving behind countless afterimages. A chilling cry echoed from within his seals. Screech. The sharp crane's cry resonated through the world. The colossal crane shadow behind He Yao rapidly shrank, condensing into a jade-green feather barely a dozen feet long. The feather drifted down gracefully, appearing almost mesmerizing. Yet beneath its beauty lurked an unsettling dread. Every onlooker could sense the terrifying spiritual energy coiled within it. He Yao's sinister eyes locked onto Mu Chun. A cold, eerie smile tugged at his lips as his voice spread through the sky. Crane Goddard, Featherfall Skyrend. He stretched out a slender finger and lightly flicked the descending jade-green feather. Buzz. The moment his fingertip touched it, visible ripples spread outward. A humming sound, soft at first, rapidly grew into a deafening resonance, filling the entire world. Whoosh! The jade-green feather shot skyward, its light expanding like a radiant explosion. From afar, it seemed to transform into a colossal feathered blade, exuding an indescribable sharpness that cut through the very air. Below, countless gazes flickered with shock as they watched the feathered blade. A mere feather, yet it now carried the power to tear through the heavens themselves. Exhale. Mu Chun slowly released a breath of white mist. He stared at the fearsome feathered blade, yet instead of panic, his eyes grew increasingly calm. Then, without hesitation, he formed a hand seal. Boundless spiritual energy surged behind him, coalescing into a starry expanse. Within that expanse, a white tiger took shape, stepping upon the stars, its aura of slaughter rippling outward. Li Xiantong raised an eyebrow at the sight of the white tiger. During his previous three-move duel with Mu Chun, the latter had used this same divine technique. However, with He Yao now fighting at full strength and possessing far superior cultivation, relying on the same technique to counter him might be overly naive. Roar! The white tiger bellowed, its killing intent surging. Its presence was formidable, yet any observer could tell that Mu Chun, bound by his lower cultivation level, was struggling. His tiger's aura was being overshadowed by the overwhelming might of the jade-green feathered blade. Below, Su Linger's delicate face was laced with worry, and Su Xian also furrowed her brows slightly. A divine technique like this is utterly wasted in your hands. He Yao's gaze was indifferent. Then, a mocking smirk curled at his lips. You actually think that white tiger of yours can stop my crane god Featherblade? How naive. Now, be cut down. Without giving Mu Chun another chance, He Yao swung his arm down sharply. Boom. At that moment, the jade-green feathered blade hovering in the sky quivered violently, emitting a sharp resonance. Its light surged and then, with an unstoppable momentum, it tilted downward and slashed directly toward Mu Chun. Slash. As the feathered blade descended, even the fabric of space seemed to be torn apart, leaving a jade-green scar in the void. The blinding blade light cascaded from the heavens, enveloping Mu Chun entirely. Roar! The white tiger roared, carrying its fierce, slaughtering aura as it charged forth to clash head-on with the descending feathered blade. However, as soon as the two made contact, the white tiger let out a roar of fury. The overwhelming killing intent was directly cleaved apart by the emerald green blade light, and the white tiger was split in two. At this moment, everyone below changed their expressions. The crane demon's attack was shockingly vicious. A cold smile appeared on the crane demon's lips, and with a mocking gaze, it looked at the young man standing high in the air, thinking, "Just leave the hunting ground like this." Amid the deafening sound of the battle, Chen looked up. He stared at the descending emerald green feather blade, his expression still unchanged. He raised both hands again, forming a new seal, and the spiritual energy behind him surged violently. Suddenly, a starry sky began to form, and between the shimmering stars, a massive beast shadow slowly materialized, one even larger than the white tiger. Moo! When the gigantic beast shadow appeared, a strange howling sound that shook the heavens and earth echoed through the sky. A black tidal wave, carrying a freezing cold aura capable of freezing the very essence of the world, surged out from the starry sky. The four deities constellation canon, Chen's hoarse voice rang out calmly at this moment. Black tortoise divine seal. The cold aura spread across the heavens and earth, drastically lowering the temperature. The air felt as though it had frozen into ice threads, and even the flowing spiritual energy of the world became sluggish and hard to control. Everyone looked in astonishment at the enormous creature formed from the starry sky behind Chen. It was a giant beast entirely black in color, resembling a tortoise, quietly lying down. However, its tail was an enormous black serpent, coiled with a fierce snake head that hissed, flicking out dark black tongues. It crawled within the starry sky, its black waves surging out, accompanied by a sound that seemed almost tangible, reverberating through the world. The black tortoise divine seal. This was the second divine seal from the four deities constellation canon. After obtaining this divine technique for so long, Chen had finally succeeded in activating this second seal. The divine technique was now beginning to reveal its true might. Chen stood in midair, looking up at the giant beast that seemed to step out from the starry sky. He then waved his sleeve. A cold voice rang out, "Go!" Moo! The black tortoise roared, and its black tidal waves surged. It stepped on the waves like a giant black water column, bringing with it a terrifying cold aura. With a mighty crash, it collided directly with the emerald green feather blade that was slashing downward. Boom! At the moment of impact, the sky seemed to distort. The next instant, an earth-shattering sound rang out across the heavens. The black water waves and the emerald blade light spread out like a flood, engulfing everything in their path. Both Chen and the crane demon were clearly in the thick of it. The violent spiritual energy shockwave slammed into them directly, causing both of them to turn pale. They were swept off their feet and sent flying. Boom! Chen was hurled into a mountain, his body embedded into the mountain's cliffside. Cracks spread across the stone, and debris rained down in all directions. Chen struggled out, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked up, and several thousand meters away, the crane demon was in a sorry state. Half of its clothes were torn apart, and its face alternated between pale and green, with blood at the corner of its mouth. Below, countless gazes focused on the two who had been sent flying, and a shocked murmur arose. No one had expected that despite the two using such powerful divine techniques, they were still evenly matched. Chen really is impressive. Even after the crane demon used the crane god art, he still couldn't defeat him. No wonder he was able to slay the spirit king. He must be the most dazzling dark horse in this hunting battle. Truly remarkable. In the surrounding air, whispers filled the air. The general consensus seemed to be that Chen was indeed extraordinary. After all, the crane demon was a top-tier figure, and as an older student, logically, it should have crushed Chen. But now, they were locked in a deadlock. From a certain perspective, this was actually a loss for the crane demon. By the edge of the stone platform, Xun'er and the others who had been watching the battle all let out a relieved breath. Chen had indeed hidden his strength. Otherwise, the crane demon's previous attack would have ended the fight right there. The crane demon even used the crane god art, but still couldn't defeat Chen. Let's see how he fights next. Xun'er remarked. As long as Chen didn't lose this battle, it could already be considered a victory for him. Su Xian, however, wasn't as optimistic. Her delicate face was still tense as she stared at the sky, wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth. Her gaze grew increasingly fierce as she looked at the crane demon. She said, "Don't underestimate the crane demon." In the sky, where countless eyes were fixed, Chen Songxing and Li Xintong glanced at Mu Chun with slight surprise. It was clear they hadn't expected him to take on He Yao's strike without being at a disadvantage. "The divine technique he used is extraordinary," Chen Songxing observed keenly, immediately noticing its peculiarity. "It's said that he obtained it from the Spirit Technique Hall. Based on my judgment, it's likely a mid-grade divine art," Li Xintong replied. Having once fought Mu Chun, he had some understanding of the four deities constellation canon. A mid-grade divine art? Chen Songxing's surprise deepened. Such techniques were extremely rare in the Spirit Technique Hall, and the chances of obtaining one were slim. Was Mu Chun really that lucky? Moreover, Chen Songxing knew that while divine techniques were powerful, they were incredibly difficult to master. Some people might acquire them, but never succeed in cultivating them. For Mu Chun to both obtain and successfully cultivate one, his ability was no small feat. If even that wasn't enough to deal with Mu Chun, this must be quite a blow to He Yao, Chen Songxing chuckled, glancing toward He Yao in the distance. This guy has been hiding his strength in the academy, likely preparing to deal with me. If this is all he has, he wouldn't have had the confidence to challenge me, Li Xintong said with a faint smile. Perhaps he never expected to be forced into such a situation by Mu Chun. His gaze shifted toward Mu Chun, and he added, "But this might not be good news for Mu Chun." As they spoke, He Yao, standing in the distance, slowly lifted his head, his expression emotionless. His cold, piercing eyes locked onto Mu Chun as he silently tore away his tattered clothing. "I didn't expect you to actually master such a powerful divine technique." Mu Chun smiled without responding, but inwardly, his vigilance grew. "This was originally meant for dealing with Li Xintong, but it seems I have no choice now," He Yao murmured, his face revealing a chilling smile that sent a shiver through the air. Mu Chun's eyes narrowed as he focused on He Yao's body. As He Yao ripped away his upper garments, intricate blood-red markings emerged across his chest. These markings, drawn in viscous blood, faintly formed a crimson seal. Strangely, even though exposed for a while, the blood retained its vitality, slowly pulsing as if still alive. "That is," Chen Songxing and Li Xintong both fixed their gazes on the blood-etched mark on He Yao's chest. "It looks like spirit beast essence blood. Judging by its fluctuations, it must belong to a high-ranking beast from the beast catalog Earth list," Li Xintong speculated. Chen Songxing nodded slightly. "It resembles the blood of a heavenly demon crane." The heavenly demon crane? Ranked 26th on the beast catalog Earth list? Li Xintong raised an eyebrow. "I think I've seen it in the Spirit Value Hall, worth over 1,000,000 spirit points. He Yao really went all out to deal with me. But right now, it's Mu Chun who's in trouble." As they spoke, Mu Chun also frowned slightly, observing the scene. He wasn't entirely sure what He Yao was planning, but he could sense danger. He Yao ignored everyone. Lowering his head, he gazed at the blood mark on his chest, then bit his fingertip. Fresh blood dripped down, staining his hands red. Suddenly, his fingers formed a series of intricate seals in rapid succession. As his hand seals changed, the blood mark on his chest grew even more vivid, emitting a piercing screech. The mark spread rapidly, engulfing his entire body. Even his eyes turned blood red, and an overwhelming, savage aura erupted from within him. In that moment, he resembled a human-shaped beast. "Crane God Art, Crane God's Descent." He Yao's raspy voice echoed through the air. As his words fell, cracks split across his skin, and blood-red feathers burst forth, enveloping his body. In mere moments, he had transformed. His form was covered in crimson plumes, each feather razor-sharp like a blade. An indescribable aura spread, making him appear impossibly dangerous. Hiss. Below, countless onlookers gasped in shock, instinctively taking a step back. What kind of divine technique is this? Such a terrifying transformation. He Yao's blood-red eyes locked onto Mu Chun, You forced me into this, Mu-chan. You brought this upon yourself. The crane demon's blood-red eyes fixed on Mu-chan, and bloodlight surged, seemingly transforming into a colossal crane shadow behind him. The crane shadow unfurled its wings, covering the sky as if it could block out the entire world. The crimson glow erupted from the crane demon's body, and at that moment, it resembled a blood-red full moon, howling as it tore through the sky. The bloodlight spread and almost engulfed the heavens. Mu-chan gazed at the incoming blood-red moon, and with a deep breath, black flames ignited fiercely in his black eyes. His arms slowly stretched out, and black flames surged from his body, accompanied by a clear, melodic cry. Suddenly, the sound echoed through the air, and the black flames roared, rapidly spreading across the sky. Countless gazes locked onto the raging black flames. Beneath them, the temperature of the world seemed to rise with the flames. Screech! Another clear, piercing cry resounded through the world, and the heavens seemed to boil with energy. Under the watchful eyes of many, amidst the rolling black flames in the sky, a pair of wings, burning with black flames and large enough to conceal mountains, suddenly stretched out. As the black flames spread, the crowd watched in awe. From the dissipating flames, a massive black bird appeared out of nowhere. That's... Shin Songxing and Li Xintong both stared, their eyes narrowing in shock. The nine-nether sparrow. Screech. A sharp, resounding cry echoed throughout the heavens and earth. Countless eyes trembled as they watched the massive black bird, which emerged from the torrential black flames. The bird's wings, large enough to cover mountains, stretched wide, and as the black flames swept through, the temperature of the world rose. The nine-nether sparrow. Shin Songxing and Li Xintong exchanged a glance, both reading the shock in each other's eyes. They murmured, "He can still transform into a spirit beast form at this level." Everyone knew that upon entering the divine soul stage, each practitioner gained the ability to refine the essence of a spirit beast. It was this essence that allowed divine soul stage experts to harness the power of spirit beasts. However, this ability wasn't permanent, because even though a spirit beast's essence was powerful, it would eventually dissipate. As a practitioner's strength grew, particularly when breaking through the divine soul stage, heaven merging stage, and heaven transformation stage, the power of the spirit beast's essence would gradually be replaced by their own strength. Of course, not all spirit beast essences would dissipate. If a practitioner formed a high level of resonance with the essence, the power would remain. But such cases were rare, as spirit beast essences inherently rejected humans. Even if the spirit beast was killed, the remaining essence would continue to resist, unless it willingly submitted to being refined, which would allow its power to stay with the practitioner. But would a proud and rebellious spirit beast allow itself to be willingly refined after being slain? Therefore, as many practitioners advanced and broke through the heaven-merging, heaven-transformation, and heaven-reaching stages, the spirit beast essence within them would gradually fade. That essence would eventually be replaced by stronger powers. This was why Shin Songxing and the others were so stunned when they saw Mu-chan still able to transform into the nine-nether sparrow, and in such a complete form. "I really don't know what level of resonance Mu-chan has achieved with the nine-nether sparrow's essence," Shin Songxing said with a surprised smile. "In all these years, this is the first time I've seen a human transform into such a complete nine-nether sparrow form." Li Xintong nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the enormous nine-nether sparrow. His expression was somewhat complicated. Mu-chan had undergone a dramatic transformation since just a few months ago. This is incredible. To be able to transform into such a complete nine-nether sparrow form at this stage? Below, Wang Tong and the others also marveled in surprise. When they were in the divine soul stage, they had refined powerful spirit beast essences. But as they progressed into the heaven transformation stage, those essences had almost entirely dissipated. The fact that they could not even transform into a fully formed spirit beast was beyond their comprehension. Luoli, standing to the side, gave a slight smile. She knew exactly why Mu-chan had been able to achieve this. His bond with the nine-nether sparrow went beyond mere compatibility. Their lives were intertwined, connected by a bloodline link. a bond that not everyone could endure, let alone embrace with courage. For most people, the power of spirit essence might be temporary, but for Mu Chen, it would accompany him for his entire life. With a sharp cry, the massive black bird wreathed in black flames soared through the sky, its wings vibrating as it collided violently with the blood-crimson moon that cut through the heavens. Boom! The two terrifying forces clashed with a thunderous sound, like the roar of a great thunderstorm, shaking the space around them and distorting the area with its sheer force. The black flame-burning bird and the blood-crimson moon crashed together, each power relentlessly trying to engulf the other. Boom! Boom! The chaotic fluctuations of spiritual energy surged outward like a massive tidal wave, sweeping through the area, leaving many of those watching with tingling spines. Everyone could see black and red energies furiously clashing and merging between the giant bird and the moon. In a mere dozen breaths, these two forces condensed into a massive orb of light, roughly 100 feet in diameter. Inside the orb, the energies were in a state of extreme, frenzied upheaval, like a ticking bomb. And like a bomb, it was bound to explode. Just as the thought flashed through the crowd's minds, they witnessed the black and crimson energy sweeping across the sky. Then, a deafening roar shattered the air. Boom! The massive spiritual energy sphere, formed by the full force of the two combatants, finally reached its breaking point and exploded. A spiritual energy storm erupted, enveloping the giant bird and the moon in an instant. The blinding light forced everyone below to squint their eyes. A nearly 1,000-foot-wide shockwave of spiritual energy rippled outward, expanding until it reached the horizon. At that moment, Lingguang Mountain, standing like a pillar of the heavens, began to tremble. Boom! Boom! Amidst the ravaging spiritual energy storm, two beams of light, one black and one red, were violently flung out, crashing heavily onto the vast stone platform below. Boom! The ground shook as the massive stone platform, thousands of feet in size, shattered. Two deep craters appeared, with large cracks spreading like a spider's web from the impact points. Around the stone platform, figures leapt into the air, their eyes fixed nervously on the scene. Who had come out on top from that world-shattering clash? Everyone knew that this attack would determine the victor. As countless eyes converged, the dust began to settle from the shattered stone platform, revealing two bottomless pits. The dark depths of the pits obscured all sight. Who had won? Whoosh! A sudden gust of wind broke the silence from within the deepest part of the pit. Everyone quickly focused their gaze, and then they saw a blood-red figure, stumbling upward from the left pit. It was Yao, his body covered in deep, savage wounds, blood dripping down and staining his appearance. He looked utterly disheveled. Some sighed regretfully. So it was Yao who stood victorious in the end. Those who had been watching intently, like Xun'er, couldn't help but look shocked. Ha ha ha! Covered in blood, Yao looked up at the silent pit and burst into a twisted laugh. Mu Chen, weren't you so proud of yourself? But in the end, the one who laughs last is me. Some in the crowd sighed, wondering if Mu Chen had been outplayed this time. Still, to force Yao into such a desperate state was no small feat given some more time. Surpassing Yao seemed inevitable. In the sky, Shen Songxing and Li Xintong wore calm expressions. They exchanged a glance and then smiled faintly. Chirp! A clear, loud cry suddenly pierced the heavens. Yao's expression changed drastically at this moment. The ground trembled slightly as a wave of scorching heat surged from the depths of the massive crater. Then, everyone saw torrents of black flames erupting like a tidal wave. Within the inferno, a colossal black bird soared into the sky, casting an immense shadow that shrouded the land below. Boom! Above the sky, black flames raged as the enormous bird, engulfed in fire, slowly flapped its massive wings. Its razor-sharp eyes locked onto Yao, whose face was frozen in shock. The difference in strength between the two was now clear at a glance. How is this possible? Yao muttered, his face filled with disbelief. He stared at the nearly unscathed nine-nether sparrow, murmuring to himself. His most powerful attack had barely harmed Mu Chen at all? The black flames swirled as the massive form of the nine-nether sparrow rapidly shrank. Under countless astonished gazes, it transformed into a tall, slender figure. Mu Chen reverted to his human form. Though his face was slightly pale, his dark eyes remained sharp and spirited. Compared to He Yao, his condition was far better. He Yao's attack had been overwhelmingly fierce, but he had underestimated how resilient Mu Chen had become after fully transforming into the nine-nether sparrow. The nine-nether sparrow's form was vastly superior to a human body in terms of sheer endurance. He Yao, celebrating too soon is never a good thing, Mu Chen said with a faint smile, looking at the utterly disheveled He Yao. I don't believe it. You're nothing more than an arrow at the end of its flight. Stop pretending. He Yao roared, bloodshot eyes blazing with madness. He lunged toward Mu Chen in a violent charge. Mu Chen watched indifferently. Compared to before, He Yao's speed and strength had weakened drastically. With a flick of his finger, a beam of spiritual energy shot out and struck He Yao squarely. Boom! He Yao was sent flying, crashing into the ground and skidding a long distance before coming to a stop. A mouthful of blood sprayed from his lips. Mu Chen's gaze remained icy as he flicked his finger once more. Another beam of spiritual energy streaked through the air and, before He Yao could react, struck him head-on. Bang! The earth trembled slightly. Whoosh! A beam of light descended from the sky, enveloping He Yao. Before he could resist, a swish echoed, and he was instantly teleported out of the hunting ground. Mu Chen watched as He Yao disappeared, then lifted his head and exhaled deeply. The pallor on his face grew even more pronounced. This battle had not been easy, but in the end, he had won. As He Yao was transported away, the entire battlefield fell into a dead silence. Countless gazes turned toward the pale yet standing young man, and within those eyes, a trace of awe began to emerge. In the sky, Shen Songxing and Li Xintong exchanged smiles. The third-ranking position was now Mu Chen's. The grand battle in the sky had finally concluded. The vast radiant platform lay in ruins, with two massive craters occupying nearly half of the stone arena. Jagged cracks stretched outward, making the blackened pits appear even more ominous. Around the platform, an endless sea of spectators stood motionless. The silence suggested they were still reeling from the shocking clash they had just witnessed. Countless eyes turned to the young figure in the sky, their gazes filled with respect. If, before, Mu Chen had still been regarded as a newcomer, this battle had cemented his status as one of the top figures of Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. On the heavenly ranking, he now had a place among the top 3. Such an achievement left many in awe. After all, Mu Chen had been in Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy for only 6 months. Yet in this short time, his growth had been nothing short of astonishing. His talent was nothing less than monstrous. Mu Chen won. Su Linger's delicate face lit up with uncontrollable joy. She clutched Su Xian's wrist excitedly. Nearby, Li Qing and Guo Xiong chuckled, their gazes complex as they looked at the young man in the sky. In just 2 months since returning, his strength had already advanced to such a terrifying degree. Su Xian also smiled gently, her beautiful eyes carrying a trace of wonder. Even she had not expected Mu Chen to truly defeat He Yao. It seems I'll have to give up my 3rd place on the heavenly ranking, Luo Li said with a light laugh, not showing any reluctance. She wasn't particularly attached to the spot. If it weren't for that crane demon's provocation, she might not have bothered to compete for it at all. Not far away, Wang Tong and the others also let out a sigh of relief. Then, as they stared at the figure in the sky, their gazes subtly changed. When they first learned that Mu Chen and Luo Li had slain the Spirit King, they were amazed, but it didn't shock them as much as this moment did. After all, Crane Demon was a top figure in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, someone whom only Shen Songxing and Li Xinhong could suppress within the entire academy. Yet now, a 3rd person had appeared, and he was a freshman. The shock this caused far surpassed the amazement of slaying a Spirit King, even though the Crane Demon's power might not necessarily be stronger than that of a Spirit King. Mu Chen defeated Crane Demon, which means he will take the 3rd spot, and Rand suddenly whispered. Wang Tong and the others' expressions grew serious. their eyes filled with fear as they looked toward the towering, mist-shrouded mountain. At the peak stood the final guardians of this hunting war. They were the three generals of Xing Palace. Even Xun'er, a dominant force on the heavenly ranking, had to be extra cautious around them. If they couldn't get past the three generals, all the efforts they had put into the hunting war so far would be for nothing. Luo Li's clear eyes also narrowed slightly. She understood well that the three positions, nearly the strongest among all the students, represented both honor and immense pressure. The hunting war was the highlight of the year for all the students, what they had worked and endured for. Their suffering and solitude and harsh training was all for the chance to shine in the hunting war and earn the coveted spirit light baptism. But now, the three generals had become an insurmountable mountain for all the students, a challenge they could not overcome. Their hopes rested on Xun'er, Li Xiantong, and the recently earned third-place holder, Mu Chen. With that hope, however, came pressure. Nearly every student participating in the hunting war was placing their expectations on these three. If they could defeat the three generals, their reputation among all the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy would soar to the highest point. They would be truly revered and appreciated. This was the honor that the victors should enjoy. But what if they lost? What kind of blow would it be when hope turned to disappointment? Luo Li lightly clenched her jade hand, her expression serious as she looked at Mu Chen's figure. That third spot was not easy to claim. As Luo Li's expression shifted, Xun'er and Li Xiantong landed nearby, standing next to Mu Chen. They exchanged a strange glance with him before smiling and saying, "Congratulations on defeating Crane Demon. But I must also tell you, the third spot is now yours. I'm sure you understand what this means. It's not an easy task." Mu Chen hesitated for a moment, then nodded slightly. He knew very well how heavy the pressure of the third spot was. If he failed, many would be disappointed, and all the hard work of others would be in vain. Below, Luo Li also flickered over and stood beside Mu Chen. She glanced at Xun'er and Li Xiantong, but said nothing. Li Xiantong looked at Luo Li with a complicated expression before turning to Mu Chen. "I don't think you're fully aware of the situation. We've tested the three generals. Xun'er and I can hold off the other two, and the result would be either a win or a draw." Mu Chen's gaze sharpened. "A draw? Does that mean it would always end in a stalemate? According to the rules, we students can gain a slight advantage. So, if we can draw all three matches, we win," Xun'er said with a wry smile. "In other words, Li Xiantong and I will ensure 2 draws. Similarly, they will also have 2 draws. The key to victory lies in the third match." A serious expression appeared on Mu Chen's handsome, pale face. Luo Li, standing beside him, also furrowed her brows. "The third match," Li Xiantong said calmly. "If you can guarantee a draw, we win. But if you lose, we lose everything." Mu Chen's expression slightly changed. If that's the case, it meant the pressure originally shared by 3 people was now entirely placed on his shoulders. If he failed, he would bear the weight of all the hope. No one might blame him, but the silent disappointment would be enough to crush a person's confidence. That kind of outcome would be even more devastating than losing to He Yao. Losing to He Yao would not draw any harsh words because it would be seen as his personal matter. But if he lost at this final hurdle, it would mean failing not only his own efforts but also the expectations and hard work of everyone around him. The burden was too heavy. Xun'er and Li Xiantong looked at Mu Chen in silence, halting their conversation. They simply watched him, and the unspoken, tense atmosphere spread, eventually enveloping the entire world. Countless people below were looking up at the figures gathered in the sky, vaguely understanding what was being discussed. Many of them wore solemn expressions, their eyes filled with expectant gazes toward the figures in the sky, figures that carried all their hopes. This year's intense training, whether it would bear fruit, rested on the choices and actions of these individuals who represented their strongest forces. Su Ling'er and Su Xian, with their delicate faces drawn in concentration, felt the weight of the position. It was a bit too heavy, especially for a new student like him. It was somewhat cruel to place such a responsibility on his shoulders. Li Xiantong glanced at Mu Chen for a moment before shifting his gaze and speaking. "If you feel you can't bear this position, you can choose to give it up. No one would have the right to criticize you. After all, you're still a freshman, and there's no need to carry such pressure. Chen smiled lightly. The wind blew through his tousled hair as he patted Mu Chen on the shoulder, his aloof expression undiminished. Don't feel too much pressure. Li Xintong is right. I almost forgot you're still a new student. If you don't feel confident, giving up would be the best choice. If not, I'll step in and help out, maybe even spar with Senior Lin Zheng. It's not like we'd be afraid of him. In the heavy silence that enveloped the world, Luo Li reached out with her delicate, jade-like hand and gently grasped Mu Chen's. She looked at him, her brow furrowed, and gave a soft smile. Even if everyone else is disappointed, to me, you will always be the brightest. Mu Chen gazed at Luo Li's delicate, porcelain-like face. Slowly, he closed his eyes. His hand, which held Luo Li's, gradually tightened. In the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. His black pupils became sharp and bright again, and the hesitation was completely wiped away. He raised his head, his piercing gaze fixed on the mist-covered mountain peak. A smile appeared on his handsome face, and in a gentle voice he murmured, "Although I know the pressure I'll have to bear, giving up is not my style. Besides, if I don't even have the courage to shoulder this pressure, how can I ever pursue the path of becoming an unparalleled powerhouse?" He turned to look at the beautiful girl by his side, dressed in dark robes, her long silver hair flowing. He had promised her that he would become an unmatched powerhouse and stand before her, shattering the pressure from all directions. If he lacked the courage to withstand this pressure now, how could he continue on the path to becoming an invincible warrior? Shen Songxing and Li Xintong looked at the suddenly invigorated young man in surprise. They couldn't help but smile. This Mu Chen was indeed more reliable than He Yao. Mu Chen smiled, his gaze fixed on the mountain peak enveloped in mist. Faintly, it seemed as though he could see three figures, like demonic gods, standing there. The pressure was as crushing as Mount Tai, but his smile grew even stronger. "Senior brothers, leave the third position to me. Regardless of the outcome." Mu Chen's black pupils brightened.